All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're talking about a diagnosis that can feel, well, pretty overwhelming for families. Childhood Apraxia of Speech, or CAS for short. Our goal here is to really cut through the noise, give you some clarity, and offer a little support.
So let's start with what it's actually like for a child. I mean, can you imagine knowing exactly what you want to say, but when you try, the message just gets lost? It's kind of like a bad connection on an old school tin can telephone. The idea is crystal clear in their head, but getting the words to come out right, that's the real battle.
So what's causing this interruption? In this next part, we're going to break down what childhood apraxia of speech really is.
Okay, so it all boils down to something called motor speech planning. Just think of the brain as a conductor of an orchestra. Before a single note is played, the conductor has to plan out exactly which instruments, in this case the tongue, the lips, the jaw, need to do what, and in what specific order, just to make a single sound.
Well, with CIS, that conductor's message gets all jumbled up. The brain knows the word, 100%, but the instructions it sends down to the speech muscles are just inconsistent. And it's so important to get this. The muscles themselves are perfectly fine. It's the planning and the signaling from the brain that's the issue. And that breakdown, that's what we call apraxia.
And this, right here, brings us to maybe the most important point of all. This is not about a lack of effort. Far from it. Children with CAS are often working incredibly hard, way harder than other kids, just to make sounds. They are not lazy. They are fighters, plain and simple.
So that naturally leads to the next big question on every parent's mind. If this is happening in the brain, what's causing it? Let's see what the research has to say.
And of course, this is often the very first thing families ask. I mean, when you get a diagnosis like this, you just want to understand the why behind it all.
And trying to find that why can honestly feel just like this, like you're lost at sea in a big storm, surrounded by unknowns. That feeling of uncertainty, it can be one of the toughest parts of this whole journey.
So here's what we do know, and this is so important. The exact cause, a lot of the time, it's unknown. We know for sure it's a neurological condition. But I want you to look at that third point. Let's just pause here because if you hear nothing else, please hear this. It is not the parent's fault, ever.
Okay, so once you start to get a handle on the condition, the focus naturally shifts, right? It shifts to action. So what does the path forward look like? Well, that brings us to the therapy journey.
I love this slide because it's such a great way to think about it. On the left, you see the struggle, right? It's like a child trying to move these huge, complex gears. That's what speaking can feel like. But with the right kind of intensive therapy, they learn to master that machinery. And you see on the right, that struggle, it starts to turn into confidence.
Now, we got to be real here. Therapy for CAS is absolutely a marathon, not a sprint. It takes time, it takes a lot of effort, and just tons and tons of repetition to build those new pathways in the brain for speech.
And how do you succeed in that marathon? Well, it's all about teamwork. It comes down to a few key things. First, working with your therapist to set clear goals you can actually reach. Second, being consistent and getting to those sessions. And third, and this one is huge, bringing that practice home and doing it consistently.
But a kid's world is so much bigger than just a therapy room, isn't it? The challenges of CAS and the ways to manage it, they go right into the classroom.
Yeah, because CAS is a motor planning issue, it can sometimes be connected to other challenges at school. So you'll want to be on the lookout for things like difficulties with reading or writing. Sometimes even behavioral issues pop up, which often just comes from the sheer frustration of not being understood. And sadly, anytime a child is seen as different, it can put them at risk for bullying.
So what's the game plan? How do you tackle that? It's all about education. You have to be proactive. Talking to teachers, to school staff, even to the other kids in the class about CAS, it can change everything. It turns confusion into compassion, and it really helps build a foundation for real, supportive friendships.
So as we start to bring this all together, we have to look to the future and address that huge question that, let's be honest, is weighing on every single parent's mind.
And there it is, the big one. You know, this question, it's about so much more than just words. It's about a parent's deepest hope for their child's future, their ability to connect with others, to be heard, to be truly understood.
And the most honest answer is, it's complicated. There really is no single outcome. As you can see from this list, a child's progress depends on so many different things. How severe the CAS is, how intensive the therapy is, the child's own personality and motivation,
And of course, the strength of that support system both at home and at school.
But you know, something really profound tends to happen along this journey. The focus, it starts to shift. That clinical goal of normal speech often gets reframed into something much more powerful. It becomes less about perfect sounds and more about what speech is really for connection, for understanding, for friendship.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to take with us. We know progress is the goal. We're all working towards that. But the bigger question for all of us, for parents, teachers, and friends, is how can we make sure that no matter what that progress looks like, that child's reality is always one of acceptance and friendship?